Hey everybody, welcome to the Deep Dive. I'm Mark Buzz.
And I'm Anna Bugs.
It's almost like we were meant to host a show like this, right? Our names.
It really is quite fitting, isn't it?
Well, speaking of fitting in today, we're diving deep into a critter that's found its way into a lot of homes, especially in California.
Oh, you mean?
The German cockroach.
Yes, those pesky little guys.
And lucky for us, we've got a great source to help us understand these roaches and how to get rid of them.
Let's hear it.
It's an article from Simple Pest Management titled 8 Tips for Getting Rid of German Cockroaches in California. So if you're dealing with a cockroach situation right now, this one's for you.
You know, these roaches are more than just a nuisance, right? They can actually cause some health problems.
Oh, absolutely. They can spread bacteria, trigger allergies. I actually knew someone who had really bad asthma, and it turned out,
Oh, no.
yeah, cockroach droppings were the main culprit. So needless to say, getting rid of these guys is important. So let's get into these 8 tips. What's the first step in evicting these unwelcome tenants?
Well, you got to think of it like a game of strategy. You're going up against these tiny little invaders, and your first move is to cut off their resources.
Cut off their resources. Okay, like what?
The article really emphasizes eliminating food and water sources.
That makes sense. But how do you eliminate all food sources in, say, a kitchen?
You're right, it's not about making your house completely sterile, but you got to make it as unappealing as possible for these roaches.
So like what? What are some things people can do?
Well, they recommend storing food in airtight containers, wiping down surfaces regularly, and of course taking out the trash often, those tiny crumbs under the fridge.
Oh yeah, I've seen those.
That can be enough to sustain a whole colony.
Wow, so even the tiniest crumbs can become a cockroach buffet.
Exactly. And speaking of buffets, we can't forget about water sources.
Right, because I imagine they can survive on just about anything.
Pretty much. Even a small leak can be like an oasis for them.
No kidding.
Simple Pest Management recommends fixing leaky faucets, immediately wiping up spills, and keeping an eye on any areas that are prone to dampness.
Makes sense. I bet they'd love to hang out under appliances too, right? Where it's nice and damp.
You know what? They actually mention that specifically. They say to check for leaks under appliances, especially dishwashers and washing machines.
That makes sense. All right, so we've cut off their food and water. What's next?
Now we gotta think like a cockroach.
Seems like a cockroach.
Yeah, imagine them as these tiny little ninjas sneaking through the smallest cracks and crevices. That's why sealing up entry points is so important.
So caulking around windows and doors.
Definitely, but it goes beyond that. Simple Pest Management says to check those less obvious spots too.
Not obvious spots.
Like around pipes, utility lines, gaps behind appliances. You gotta think like a cockroach.
So basically a full-on home inspection.
Exactly. They're like little escape artists, always looking for a way in.
This is starting to feel like a pest control detective mission, right? So we've secured the perimeter. Now how do we go on the offensive?
This is where it gets interesting. The article recommends a three-pronged attack.
Ooh, I like the sound of that. Tell me more.
They suggest using a combination of baits, traps, and dusts.
Okay, let's break that down starting with gel baits. How do those work?
Well, you know how German cockroaches are very social creatures, right?
Yeah, I've heard they communicate with each other.
They do. They use chemical trails to lead each other to food and water sources, and jelly baits take advantage of this.
Really? How so?
Basically, one cockroach eats the bait, and then it unknowingly spreads the poison throughout the colony.
Wow, so it's like turning their communication system against them.
Exactly. It's pretty clever, huh?
Definitely. What about those sticky traps? I've tried those before, and honestly, I wasn't that impressed.
You know, sticky traps aren't really meant to wipe out an entire infestation on their own.
So what are they good for?
They're more for surveillance. They help you figure out where the cockroaches are most active so you can target your other treatments more effectively.
So it's like intelligence gathering. You need to know your enemy.
Exactly. And then there are dusts. The article mentions boric acid and diatomaceous earth.
Right, I've heard of those. Are those safe to use around pets, though?
That's a great question, and it's important to be cautious with any pest control products. Always read and follow the label instructions carefully. Boric acid and diatomaceous earth work by dehydrating the cockroaches.
Interesting.
But they can pose risks to pets if ingested.
So it's all about using these things responsibly. Okay, so far we've covered food, water, entry points, baits, traps, and dusks. Anything else?
You know, Simple Pest Management goes beyond just the pest control aspect. They actually recommend focusing on overall cleanliness.
Wait, are you telling me that cleaning my house can help with cockroaches?
Well, in this case, yes. They emphasize decluttering.
Decluttering, seriously.
Seriously, cockroaches love clutter, all those piles of old newspapers, boxes, clothes.
I guess they like vintage stuff, huh?
Well, maybe not, but they love the hiding places and potential food sources that come with clutter, so keeping things organized, especially storage areas, is crucial.
Okay, so spring cleaning just got a whole new purpose. It's not just about aesthetics, it's about cockroach warfare.
That's one way to put it.
All right, this is all great advice, but what if all this DIY stuff isn't enough?
You know, you're right. Sometimes you need to call in the professionals.
Right.
And that's where Simple Pest Management comes in. They highlight the benefits of using their service, like their expertise and their targeted solutions.
They are the experts after all. And speaking of experts, if you like what you're hearing today, Hit that follow button and give us a like. We're always diving deep into interesting topics, and we love sharing what we learn with you.
And if you're in California and you're dealing with cockroaches, check out Simple Pest Management. They've got a lot of great resources and advice on their social media. You can find all the links in the show notes.
Great reminder. So we've covered a lot in this first part of our deep dive on German cockroaches. But we're not done yet. We'll be back in a minute with even more insights and strategies. Stay tuned.
Welcome back to the deep dive.
We're back at it, tackling those resilient German cockroaches.
And we're armed with even more knowledge from Simple Pest Management.
That's right. We've covered a lot of ground already, haven't we? From cutting off their food and water to sealing up those pesky entry points.
We even talked about those interesting insect growth regulators, or IGRs.
Ah, yes, the IGRs. They're like a secret weapon in the pest control world, right?
You could say that instead of killing cockroaches outright, they disrupt their life cycle.
So it's like a long-term strategy preventing those future generations from taking over.
Exactly. It's all about breaking the cycle.
But, earlier we were talking about eliminating food sources, and I was thinking that's got to be nearly impossible to get rid of every single crumb.
You're right, it is a tough task. But that's where IGRs can really shine. They're most effective when used strategically.
Strategically. How so?
Well, you want to target those areas where cockroaches tend to congregate and breed.
Like where?
Think like near trash cans, those hidden voids behind cabinets, those hard-to-reach spots.
So it's about hitting them where it hurts, disrupting their breeding grounds.
Exactly. And there are actually different types of IGRs out there.
Really?
Yep, some prevent the eggs from hatching while others stop the nymphs from maturing into adults.
Wow. So it's a multi-pronged approach, even within the IGRs themselves.
Exactly. It's all about using the right tool for the job. And Simple Pest Management, they're always staying up to date on the latest and greatest in pest control technology.
That's good to know. But even with all the best strategies, sometimes those roaches just don't want to give up.
It's true. They can be incredibly persistent.
So what happens then? What does Simple Pest Management recommend for those really tough infestations?
Well, they have a few extra tricks up their sleeves. For one, they suggest installing mesh screens over drains.
Over drains. Why drains?
You might be surprised to hear that the cockroaches are actually pretty good swimmers.
You kidding?
Nope. They can easily travel through plumbing systems and sewer lines, and guess what? They can enter your home through those drains.
So it's like an underwater invasion.
Pretty much. And a mesh screen acts as a barrier preventing those waterborne roaches from getting in.
Makes sense. Another thing they recommend is avoiding those over-the-counter aerosol sprays.
Oh yeah, those...
But those are what most people use, right?
I know it seems counterintuitive, but those sprays can actually make the problem worse.
How so?
They often just scatter the cockroaches, driving them deeper into hiding spots.
So you're not really getting rid of them, you're just spreading them out.
Exactly. And then they're harder to target with other treatments. Simple Pest Management really stresses the importance of a strategic approach. Got to be smart about it.
So no more just spraying and praying, huh?
Not if you want to be effective. And another key part of that strategic approach is regular inspections.
Inspections?
Yes, especially in those high-risk areas like garages, pantries, those dark, forgotten corners of the house.
So it's like being a detective, always on the lookout for clues.
Exactly. You got to catch those early warning signs before a full-blown infestation takes hold.
Like what kind of signs?
Think droppings, shed skins, or even that musty odor that cockroaches sometimes leave behind.
Ugh, I know that smell. So we're talking about being proactive, stopping the problem before it starts.
Exactly. And that proactivity should extend beyond the interior of your home, too.
What do you mean?
Well, even though cockroaches love the warmth and shelter of our homes, they can survive outdoors too, especially in places like California.
Oh, right. It's pretty warm here.
Exactly. And things like overgrown shrubs near your foundation, open garbage bins, pet food left outside those can all attract roaches.
So it's like creating a defensive perimeter around your house.
That's a great way to put it. You're minimizing those attractive factors both inside and outside.
And that'll make your home much less appealing to those roaches.
Hopefully. So it's really about a multifaceted approach, combining those preventative measures with targeted treatments, and when in doubt, call in the pros at Simple Pest Management.
They're the experts, after all. And speaking of experts, if you're liking what you're hearing, be sure to follow Simple Pest Management on social media.
They share tons of great tips and advice.
You can find all their links in the show notes. All right, we've covered a lot in this second part of our deep dive on German cockroaches, but we're not done yet. Before we wrap things up, we wanted to give a quick shout out to all our amazing listeners.
If you're enjoying the deep dive, please hit that follow button and leave us a review. It really helps us out.
We love exploring these fascinating topics with you, and your support means the world to us. Now let's take a quick breather and get ready for our final analysis of this cockroach conundrum. Welcome back to the deep dive. We're in the home stretch now, wrapping up our exploration of German cockroaches and how to keep them out of our homes.
It's been quite a journey, hasn't it? We've learned so much.
We have, from their social behavior to those high-tech IGRs to just how sneaky they can be.
So much to think about.
So after all this, what's the biggest takeaway? Can we really win the war against cockroaches?
Well, I think the key takeaway is that While complete eradication might be tough, you can absolutely manage and control those German cockroach populations.
So it's about empowering ourselves with knowledge, right? Understanding their habits and using that to our advantage.
Exactly. By taking those preventative measures, eliminating food and water sources, sealing up those entry points, decluttering our homes, we're making our homes a lot less attractive to those roaches.
Right. It's like we're taking away their welcome mat.
And if those DIY efforts aren't enough, we know we can always call in the professionals.
Like Simple Pest Management.
Exactly. They have the expertise and the tools to really tackle those tough infestations.
So maybe this deep dive has inspired you to finally fix that leaky faucet or declutter that storage room.
Or maybe it's given you the confidence to call in the pros and get rid of those roaches once and for all.
Whatever your next step, we hope this deep dive has given you the knowledge and the resources to deal with those pesky cockroaches.
Remember, it's not just about reacting to an infestation. It's about being proactive and taking steps to prevent them in the first place.
And if you want to learn more about keeping your home pest-free, be sure to follow Simple Pest Management on social media. They've got some great tips and advice over there.
You can find all the links in our show notes.
And of course, be sure to follow us on The Deep Dive for more explorations into all sorts of fascinating topics.
That's right, we're always diving deep into something new.
Until next time, happy diving.